Good evening, everyone. I'm Patrick Delaney.
And I'm Chris Okishi.
And welcome to our very first episode of Voices from the Crowd, a crooked path guide to theater in the Eastern Corridor. I'd like to state for the record that is a working title.
That is a working title.
And
we're not sure that title's working.
We look forward to finding something much more catchy, but we thought about that. We decided on this about 25 seconds ago. And there you have it. Hello and welcome. We are so glad you're here. This is what we're doing. We think that there is an opportunity being missed right now to talk about a lot of the wonderful theater that's going on in our area. We like to think of ourselves as picking up where Dottie Ray left off. So we are part Dottie Ray, part TED Talk, talking about upcoming productions in our area to give you a brief tour of the history of the show, a kind of a starter pack for theater.
Exactly. And in particular, highlighting some local history of productions that are happening in the area, as well as the national or perhaps international history of productions, and what leads to having this particular show exist in our area right now. I should also point out that one of the things that we have in common with Dottie Ray, in addition to a great love of all things local, is that we are broadcasting to you from our home, in this case, in our significantly more cluttered than Dottie Ray's house ever was basement.
Yes. Our dog, our Rottweiler Detroit, is licking my leg even as we speak. If you hear someone fart, I assure you it's the dog and not me. We're going to edit that.
Are we? All right.
Anyway, on to today's show. We are very excited about the show that we are starting with. So much so that we sort of rushed into production to get this done because we're very excited.
The show we're talking about is Stephen Sondheim and Hugh Wheeler's masterpiece, A Little Night Music, which is going to be produced by Theater Cedar Rapids. Later this week, we are coming to you on Wednesday, the 9th of August, and they open on Friday, the 11th of August, and run through Sunday, the 27th of August of 2023. This show will be produced outdoors on the lawns of Bruce Moore in Cedar Rapids. Tickets are available at the Theater Cedar Rapids website or at the Theater Cedar Rapids box office, 319-366-8591. Again, 319-366-8591. And this is going to be a not-to-be-missed show.
Yes, A Little Night Music is one of Stephen Sondheim's sort of pillars, one of the pillars on which his kingdom stands.
Very true.
We're going to give you just a brief history of the show, when it was written, and some of the more notable productions that have gone on.
Right, so this was Stephen Sondheim's eighth Broadway show, and the fourth for which he wrote the music and lyrics. The fifth for which he wrote the music and lyrics. And it was one of his first shows for which he wrote the music and lyrics that was a certified hit and was spawned into productions in London, as well as a film that was made of it, all with his collaboration partner, director Harold Prince. This was the third time they worked together with Harold Prince directing the show, but it was the seventh time that they had worked together with Harold Prince advising or producing the show. Hugh Wheeler, the person who wrote the book, holds the distinction for having won the Tony for Best Book of a Musical 3 of the 10 times it was awarded in the 70s. He won for A Little Night Music, he won for Sweeney Todd, and then he also won for Candide, another show that was affiliated with Harold Prince as well. Hugh Wheeler was not the most prolific of playwrights, but his contributions to the world of the theater are lasting and incredibly memorable. This play was based actually on a movie called Smiles on a Summer Night by Ingmar Bergman. And much of the plot is lifted directly from that, but the details and the workings and blossoming into a musical are all Sondheim and Wheeler.
Do we know how it started? Like whose brainchild was this? Is this Sondheim's idea? Is this Hugh Wheeler's idea? Is this Hal Prince's idea?
So Sondheim will say that almost all of the musicals that he's worked on have come to him as ideas from other people. And in this case, it was from Hugh Wheeler, who had seen the movie, although Sondheim and Prince had also seen it and were in agreement that it would make an excellent source material for a beautiful romantic musical.
When did it open?
It opened in 1973. Which is just 1 year after after Follies, which was 1 year after Company. So this was quite a prolific time period for Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim working together.
Was it considered successful at the time?
It was considered successful at the time. In fact, it was the first of their collaborations to be considered successful. A funny thing happened on the way to this forum, eventually recouped, which was previous to this, but all of the other shows either barely eked out a profit or closed in the red.
Got it. Are there any notables in the cast?
So in the original production, Desiree Armfeld, the actress around whom the plot revolves, was played by Glynis Johns, and and contemporary audiences probably know her best as the mother in Mary Poppins.
Votes for women.
Yes, the Sister Suffragette was her song, and she has a very distinctive style and singing style that really is of its time. You listen to her sing and you think, oh, it was the early 70s. But her wit and warmth and commitment to the role were highly noted at the time.
Well, if I remember correctly, this is also one of the few Sondheim shows that had a crossover hit that charted.
This has actually had his biggest hit, not recorded by Glynis Johns. That wasn't the hit version, although she did record for the cast album. And by the way, on this show, we do say original cast album, not soundtrack. Although technically, in this case, there is a soundtrack because it was made into a movie as well.
We're snooty that way.
We're snooty that way. And on the soundtrack, Send in the Clowns is recorded by
Judy Collins.
No, Elizabeth Taylor
on
the soundtrack.
I failed.
Yes, because Judy Collins was not in the movie. Elizabeth Taylor was in the movie.
Right.
So Judy Collins, though, covered the song, and she, among over 100 artists between 1973 and 1985, released recordings of this, including Frank Sinatra and famously Barbra Streisand, who asked Sondheim to rewrite some of the lyrics for her Broadway album. But the most successful was Judy Collins' version, which won several Grammys that year, including a Song of the Year Grammy.
Sidebar, there is a wonderful clip on YouTube of Judi Dench singing it in a concert in London, probably 15 years ago.
Yes,
and it is a case study on how to act a song. It's wonderful.
And many actors have taken on this role. If you look on the Wikipedia article for A Little Night Music and look at who's played Desiree Armfeld in productions around the world, it's quite a deep bench of people.
So back to the original cast. So Len Cariou.
Yes, Len Cariou played Carl Magnus,
and he went on to be. I think.
Excuse me. He played. Let me look quickly. I have my notes.
He played Frederick.
He did indeed played Frederick.
Yes.
Excuse me. So sorry.
Yes. And we would best know him. He went on to he was the original Sweeney Todd and won a Tony for it.
He did. Mm-hmm. He was also Tony nominated for this as well.
Yes, and. It's Hermione Gingold, yes?
Hermione Gingold played Madame Armfeld, who is Desiree's mother. And Hermione Gingold made a career of playing, I believe one critic described her as dragon-like women. And while Madame Armfeld is not necessarily dragon-like per se, she is a formidable presence and has a remarkable song in the first act that lands the show.
Got it. Are there other local actors, notable actors or notable productions?
Yes. So there was a major revival in 2009. that initially starred Catherine Zeta-Jones and Angela Lansbury as Desiree and Madame Armfeld. And then that production continued, and they were replaced by Bernadette Peters and Elaine Stritch. So if you can imagine a line between Hermione Gingold, Angela Lansbury, and Elaine Stritch all playing the same character and all winning significant acclaim in doing so.
Yes.
It truly is something. And to hear someone of the warmth and presence of Bernadette Peters singing "Send in the Clowns" was also quite remarkable,
Yes.
as the last Desiree that's been seen in New York so far.
And you mentioned Elizabeth Taylor, so it was made into a film, yes?
It's made into a film, and Elizabeth Taylor played the Desiree Armfeld part. And really, I should point out that even Hal Prince, the director of the film, would say the less said about the film, the better.
Fair enough.
But there was one major revision to the film, in that they rewrote the song that is Desiree's first song, where she sings about going to different places and
glamorous
acting,
life.
the glamorous life, when she
Yes.
describes the glamorous life. They rewrote it for Frederica, her daughter, imagining her mother's glamorous life. And it is a much more propulsive version of the glamorous life. And Audra McDonald sings, Audra McDonald, the most celebrated theater actor of all time, if you go simply by Tony Award count. At Sondheim's birthday concert, his 80th birthday concert, she sang the movie version of The Glamorous Life.
What a curious choice of all the things.
Of all the things.
And she sang it on an album. There's a recording of it.
There is a recording of it as well. There's a recording of that live performance, and then she also then put it on one of her albums.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
All right. Any others? Any other national productions that we should talk about?
So it did tour significantly afterwards, and the tour was very, very successful. And among the people on the tour include George Lee Andrews as Frederick and Gene Simmons as
Not
Desiree.
from Kiss, not the
No,
Kiss
no.
Gene Simmons.
No,
This is
but-
important.
Yes.
Although I would,
A fair
I'd
amount
pay
of
some money to
makeup.
see
Yes,
that.
yes,
I'd pay
yes.
some money.
The Jean Simmons, who also then went on to be in the go on with the show to the West End, where Hermione Gingold also reprised her role as Madame Armfeld. And it has also been done in concert productions with Jeremy Irons playing Frederick in a New York opera production.
All right. There have been. Based on the research that I did. I believe this is the third production locally that has been done in the Eastern Iowa corridor. The first was in 1978, the same year that the film came out, and Iowa City Community Theater was the first to do it in this area. It was then done again in 2011 by City Circle Acting Company, now the City Circle Theater Company. I directed that, and it starred such local luminaries as Josh Cezanne and Kristen Newman. Carrie Houchins-Witt made her main stage debut in that show and has gone on to do lots of local things.
Megan Henry was Anne in that.
Yes.
And she just closed an opera in Europe. And has gone on to have quite a career as an opera singer. And this was right at the beginning of her training.
But that was 12 years ago, and so it was high time for a new production. Interestingly, I got in touch with the University of Iowa because I wanted to include them in just local show history, and I talked to both Paul Kalina and Brian Wynn. They do not keep records of shows past maybe 10 years back, which I think is very interesting. So, dear listeners, if you happen to know of a production that was done by the university or a local production that we have missed in our research, we would love to hear from you.
Perhaps even in the Department of Music, which would have been a possibility, or
It certainly seems like, given the sort of legitimate quality of the singing and the demands involved, that it seems like an obvious choice for the University of Iowa.
absolutely, absolutely, and perhaps other colleges in the area that we just don't have the records to know about.
It's true. So yes, we'd love to hear from you. Who is starring in this production, please?
Well, yes, it's also a who's who of Cedar Rapids talent. It's quite amazing, with some faces that are well known to Cedar Rapids audiences and some new people as well. Jordan Arnold is playing Desiree.
Yay!
Yeah, and we're terribly excited to see her. And then numerous other people. Just glance through the cast list online, and you'll see people that you've seen. I want to just comment that both the romantic leads from City Circle's recent production of Secret Garden are both in this production, and Catherine Blades is in this production.
Broadway's Catherine Blades.
Broadway's Catherine Blades, and we're so excited to have her back locally. Erin Murphy, who was recently in their production, Theater Cedar Rapids production of Cabaret, is in a very different role as Carl Magnus.
Oh, that's exciting.
That should be terribly exciting. And then Brandon Burkhart, who many have seen in a variety of roles, including Newsies and in Sound of Music, and was in last summer's Mamma Mia, and people have seen him do a variety of things, is stepping out in a very interesting role, in that of the disgruntled son, Henrik, and he's had to learn how to play cello in order to make this character work, which is terribly, terribly exciting. And then his sister is also in the show. She is one of 5 singers, and this is an interesting idea that Sondheim had, of having the chorus be 5 trained legit singers that sometimes comment on the action, sometimes play characters parallel to the action, and set the mood of what's going on at various times. They've been described as a Greek chorus, but they don't always function as a Greek chorus, and then they don't always address the audience to say what's happening on stage. They sometimes just describe their own goings on as variety of characters throughout.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. They have a number of names in some opera productions. They were referred to by a German term, but that was not Sondheim's intention. That they have
Liebeslieders?
Yes, he never wanted them connected by that name. That came about through various productions after the original. He wanted them to be individuals who then stepped into a variety of extra roles. I should also point out that playing Madame Armfeld is Cheryl Moon Thomason, who is a local legend, and we cannot wait to hear her version of the song Liaisons. Can I comment a bit on the music?
Yeah, of
by
course.
the way. So Sondheim had already had a reputation by this point of being very clever in his wordplay, but always wanted to have people respect his songwriting and tuneful ability as well as his wordplay. And so he set a task for himself in this show to write everything in a waltz time, a 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. He has said consistently that the content of the play dictates the form of the music. So in Into the Woods, for example, the younger characters have a bounce to what they're doing as they're walking through the woods. Older characters have a different kind of cadence. The witch has a different kind of singing than the giant does. And each of them, their content dictates their style. And in this show, the idea that people would be a waltz, which is throwing people slightly off balance and your shifting partners at various times felt appropriate in this particular story of a man and a woman and the various romantic entanglements therein.
I'm so excited.
And then he does cheat. Well, cheat's too strong a word. But while everything is divided into a waltz time, a song like Weekend in the Country, which is designed to be very catchy and repeat the phrase, a weekend in the country, if you beat it out, it feels like maybe it's in 4/4, like a weekend in the country, da 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 da, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But what it really is 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So I'm geeking out a little bit. Each of those individual beats is divided into triples, which makes it overall fit with his theme, and yet still give us a nice, solid driving four beats per measure feel as it's moving forward. If you look at the time signatures in the actual music, you'll see that everything does, as a general rule, obey the rule of 3.
We have not really talked about the creatives involved, and there are some crazy heavy hitters. Who is our music director?
So the music director for the show at Theater Cedar Rapids is Janelle Lauer.
The Janelle Lauer.
The Janelle Lauer. And the intensely versatile Janelle Lauer, who this year alone has bounced from Cabaret, Candor and Ebb, to SpongeBob, which is a whole who's who of 90s and 2000s pop rock songwriters, to Rock of Ages, which is 80s heavy hair metal, and then now to Sondheim, writing at his most erudite. And if anyone can handle those tonal shifts, it's Janelle. And just a reminder that Janelle does have a legitimate classic and musical training as well. In fact, she went to school with 2 of the cast members' parents studying opera and vocal performance. So no slouch she, but also she of the incredibly wide as well as incredibly deep talent.
Every time I think I'm doing too much or working too hard, I think about Janelle's day. And then I think, I could go a little harder. So if you see Janelle on the street, please buy her a coffee. She could use it. She could use one, for sure.
And also buy some tickets to the show.
Yes, please.
Yes.
And then, of course, we have to talk about our director.
The director is none other than Angie Toomsen, who is also the artistic director for Theater Cedar Rapids and the soul of the programming that occurs at Theater Cedar Rapids. And again, someone whose talent extends across time and space, and from straight plays to musicals, and is guided by her impeccable taste. So I think this is going to be a very, very special show.
Yes. And we will be chatting with Angie very, very shortly.
Mm-hmm. I should also comment on the choreographer, who is Megan Robinson, who has done many beautiful things at Theater Cedar Rapids as well. And no doubt this will be amazing. And the technical director is Ben Lauer, who is always dependable for putting together something beautiful, especially on the actual lawn of Brucemore. And that is tremendously apropos, because most of the second act takes place at a country estate with a picnic on the lawn, which...
Well played, Theater
Cedar Rapids. Well played, Brucemore.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I think this is going to be a truly amazing event. And in just a few minutes, we'll have an opportunity to talk with Angie Toomsen and see what she has to tell us about how this particular production is coming together and what you'll be able to expect with this particular production at Brucemore starting this weekend. Well, hello, everyone. And as we mentioned, we actually have our very first guest, which is terribly exciting.
We are setting the bar entirely too high for ourselves. It's going to be all downhill from here.
Well, Angie, thank you so much for joining us. This is Angie Toomsen, who is the artistic director of Theater Cedar Rapids, and among many, many other things. And also is, as we mentioned before, the director of this production of A Little Night Music. We're so grateful you joined us here in the basement bunker. We're
the Star Wars. If I need to look over and see an AT-AT or a Millennium Falcon,
it's you've come to the right place. I should point out that Detroit has left the room, so there no longer are licking sounds in the background.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, or if there are, they are me, and I will own that.
Yes, it is just after lunch.
Yes, yeah. Well, we, of course, I mean, we're here, of course, to talk about Little Night Music, but also just about you and how wonderful you are. And, can we start? It feels like just in the conversations that we have had that you've lived quite a few lives.
perhaps.
How did you get here? Like, where did you grow up? And we know that you spent some time in New York, and you've had other careers. And so, how did you get here today?
I grew up primarily in Iowa. My family had a stint in upstate New York. So my earliest memories are all in the Saratoga Springs area.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And I had been to the city, so I had a kind of childhood vision of going back there from the time I was like 5 or something. So I primarily grew up in Mount Vernon and then Cedar Rapids, and I went to UNI for theater. Well, initially for vocal music, and then I switched to theater and studied theater, acting. Just drank the Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah.
Opera theater as well, and then went to Circle in the Square in New York, and then I'd gone to a summer program while I was at UNI, and then went back and went into kind of studying with Alan Langdon there full time. So I did their kind of full curriculum, and then I just stayed and stayed for about 11 years. So I lived through the evolution of 42nd Street from like shuttered storefronts to Vegas. I could drive a cab, maybe not anymore, but at the time I definitely could have been a cab driver.
Wow.
Because even the little like Gansevoort and those little streets, I knew, I knew it so well. My last neighborhood was Tribeca too, so that was a good way to go out. And then I came back thinking I was going to move somewhere cooler, like Portland or Seattle or something. And then I just realized there was so much to do here. It was easier to accomplish things. There were people like yourself, enough talent here and drive and creative aspiration that I felt like I could be challenged and continue to grow. And so I went to grad school, kind of pieced together a weird interdisciplinary curriculum that I was lucky to have been able to do. So I did the intermediate art program at the university, lots of performance art and weird stuff. And you didn't know this, did you?
No, I didn't. No, I think that's so great.
Writing, electronic music. I took that whole curriculum, some theater. So, and then a degree that I can literally make sound like anything that I need it to sound like. So
because it sounds like it was a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So I got out of grad school and I made that degree sound like something that would head me down a path as a strategist and creative director, thinking, theater, I'm not going to probably pursue theater as a career, or that time's done. And then the minute I started that career, a parallel track began of directing in the area. I kind of made my own opportunities initially, and then started getting hired at Creamery and Riverside and Theater Cedar Rapids as well as a guest director, and worked there for a while. And then eventually the artistic director spot was open, and they were doing a search for that, and kind of made a decision to move over, and totally unexpected that I would be working full time as a theater artist in Iowa. I did not plan for that. So
you found the unicorn.
I guess so. Yeah. And I've been there, still directing elsewhere, occasionally Riverside, and been there for almost 6 years, or going on 6 years. That's kind of my.
It feels like you just started there. I mean,
it feels like I just started there.
I mean, the pandemic is sort of in the middle of it. The blip.
Yeah.
You
just because you mentioned it earlier, can you talk a little bit about what Circle in the Square is and how you were involved?
Yeah. That's an actor training program in a Broadway theater in the basement, primary other spaces as well throughout the city, but at the time, so this was in the 90s. Just really luminary teachers, Moni and Mina Yakin, which I know a lot of people have, famous Juilliard teacher, movement teacher, Alan Langdon, Therese Hayden, who was the original Blanche in the national tour of Streetcar.
Wow.
And you just I was really lucky.
Old school New York.
Yeah.
Like the real deal.
And a lot of the training, even at UNI at the time, was kind of the people that were kind of came up in the 60s and 70s, and very intense, but that Dionysus in 69, like I feel very grateful. I know that a lot of that training has needed to evolve, but I feel very lucky that I had so much wonderful just perspectives, and some of it was a little nutty, but still it's a nutty thing to do, so it's
well, it sounds like you you were there right at the crossroads of sort of old 70s New York and like late 90s, early aughts New York. And what a great time to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt very grateful. And then I continued there for a while. That's a year. And then after that, I stayed in Alan Langdon's studio for a while. And then I also studied at Bill Esper's studio. This was all I started trying to piece together the most comprehensive, set of skills, like acting approaches. I wasn't really I didn't realize it at the time, but I didn't really want to be an actor. I just loved studying theater and the craft of theater, because I'd see my friends who would do anything. They'd do any play anywhere, and they ate it up, and I wasn't drawn to do those things, so I wasn't hungry to act, but I loved studying acting. And I think that was kind of my segue into thinking about directing, and of course being in New York and exposed to the best in the world, and starting to fangirl different directors and see kind of their voice and knit together projects, Joe Mantello, or George Wolfe. I mean, that's Patrick and I share the very first Broadway production we ever saw, which was the Angels in America.
We do indeed.
Yeah.
We may have been there on the same day. We don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
Do you find, I would imagine that your incredibly varied experience has served you in surprising ways as artistic director of TCR. Like, I didn't know I was going to be using that skill again, but here we are.
Absolutely. It's just, there's so many granular levels, and then you can kind of zoom out and look at big picture. And my years in the marketing world as a creative director and strategist have served me in my role at TCR.
Yeah. I imagine.
Daily. And just the way I kind of need to sort of hop around the map of what I need to focus on. There's programming, but then there's thinking about sales and revenue and then there's the experience of the human beings who come in and do the shows, and there's the artists who we bring in. So it's kind of hopping around this three-dimensional map of a really complex set of things to do. But yeah, the acting stuff, I'll find myself remembering something sometime, and oh, I know, we did this exercise once and in Moni's class or something, and then it just comes up, and I never would have thought about it again, but there just happens to be an actor that's making me think about it, or I think it might help them. So
That's remarkable.
I think there's some misconception about what an artistic director does. I think for some of us, we just sort of imagine as the artistic director is the person who picks the plays for the next season and maybe is involved in some fundraising, and then that's it. Which of course is the tip of the iceberg, I would imagine. Can if there is such a thing, can you walk us through a typical day for you?
Oh, well, there's no typical day, but I think the organization where I work is of a size that I'm not making those kinds of decisions on my own ever. I definitely, especially when it comes to plays and things, I'm definitely leading the charge on those decisions. But the bigger things, the main stage musicals, which would be considered to be our core product, there's a lot of thought that goes into what we should do, et cetera. So I'm not making those on my own. So that may be different than other like your theater, You guys probably wake up in the morning and look at each other and talk about what you're going to program.
Well, that's absolutely true. But by noon, we've forgotten it, and we're on to the next project. I always think that we work the same way. You've seen those glass boxes in malls where you step in and they blow cash, and you're supposed to catch as much as you can. That's kind of how we do it, and we never catch anything. We're just like, that project. But that. We got to do. This would be perfect, and then we cut to 4 months later.
A couple of them end up inside our shirt.
Yeah, we're like, I guess.
Like, it's done.
I guess we're doing that play.
Well, I guess I wouldn't say that doesn't happen, but the things. I mean, there's no really typical day, and it of course changes if I'm directing a show. But the things that I kind of have to touch or put my focus on in a day are, of course, anything to do with production. We have a amazing, robust production studio. We have we've built up a staff that I'm really proud to have in our state, in our area. And so kind of making sure they all have what they need, and we'll look at budgets, we'll look at, kind of bigger picture, and then what do we need to do today? But I'm also a part of our administrative team, and so I'm also very much in the revenue pacing of our, aware and need to be kind of on top of those pieces. And so I think it's probably different for every artistic director and organization, but I do feel like I kind of straddle both sides of it pretty firmly. Yeah. Like I'm very aware of where we are in line to our ticket sales goal, and I work with our marketing director and team to kind of build creative direction for how we sell things. And then I help produce commercials, and just because that kind of segues into the talent area, like what costumes do we need, what people need to be in there. And so it kind of crosses all of those zones, I would say. What I don't really, there are areas that I don't get into, and box office is one. I think to me, I understand what they're doing. I know our ticketing system and all of that, but I'm also just kind of mystified about how we do things. So I'm very, whenever we make a change or they're dealing with a patron issue, I'm just very impressed with that, and just like I don't know how they're doing that, and fundraising. I don't get into that quite as much. We have an amazing development director, and our executive director is just first rate.
Yeah.
Katie Hallman. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
But whatever I can do to support all of those, I do. Yeah.
Well, and you're part of the artistic experience that those people
Yeah.
hopefully are having that then lead to wanting to be a part
Mm-hmm.
in a variety of ways of the mission of the theater,
Yeah.
which is great. Yeah.
TCR has some exciting changes coming up in the next year or so. Can you talk a little bit about those?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I
Fair enough.
Probably can't. So
That's all right.
But it's something that the community will be aware of and
Yeah.
to watch
Yeah.
Yeah.
as every healthy organization evolves and expands and
Yeah.
shifts and meets the needs of the people that come
I
there.
will let Katie take the lead on that, and I'm sure she'd love to come talk to you both.
But
so,
yes.
yeah, when the time is right. But yeah, we have some very exciting things that we'll be launching soon.
Very exciting.
And you've announced your season, which is very
Yeah.
exciting, and auditions are coming up for
Wizard of
Wizard of
Oz in a
Oz.
couple weeks. We already filled. People love Wizard of Oz, both in our sales. It's leading the pack in our subscriptions, and the audition slots filled up. Like it's not even for a week and a half, and they're already full. So we're going to open up some more slots.
Well, we're looking forward to perhaps having you back to talk about your particular vision for Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
And I can just mention that what I've heard so far, which has been about a paragraph and a half, it sounds really exciting about honoring all of the things that people love about Wizard of Oz, but also presenting it in a way that might shine new light and
Yes.
take different angles and have a different look and feel.
Yeah, it will be magical, just as magical, but in new ways. So
That's
it's
wonderful.
yeah, very excited.
Our friend, our mutual friend, Leslie Nolte,
Yes.
refers to something called feeding your beast, which is just what gets you going artistically. So, what feeds your beast? What are you excited about artistically? What are you what gets you up in the morning to get this done?
Well, I think it's whenever I can work on something and really like dig deep and shape the vision, and of course that should be true about any property, but there are ones that kind of there are pieces that want that, and there are pieces that want it a little bit less, and so anytime I can, like Cabaret earlier this year, being able to dig into something like that and really think about how it could be presented in a really fresh way that feels very relevant and exciting, but also captures the original intent emotionally. And so that's exciting, and especially when it works well, I feel very proud, that of the outcome. And so being able to do, I fall in love with everything that I have to work on. And I'm not just saying that because I have to fall in love with it, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to show up for it.
Sure.
So whether it's Grease or Little Night Music, I'll get there, but being able to kind of place myself at the helm of certain pieces, or even choosing Little Night Music, that's an example of something. Being able to do a bucket list show, line up a team that feels the same way about it, and find a cast that has been dying to do it, and then that to me gets me up in the morning. Absolutely, yeah.
Based on some of the background that you gave us, it sounds to me like your secret theater heart is a good deal weirder than we might think.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have loved like being able to come down and direct in Iowa City. Sometimes I will. The last few years at TCR, I have been lucky enough to direct some things that I was very passionate about initially, like Dance Nation and obviously Cabaret, and but being able to also come to Iowa City and work on things here. I think that is kind of my the Annie Baker play. That is totally a wheelhouse of mine, like that I just love to step into.
Sure.
Or collaborate with other artists outside of our group at TCR.
In the 2 hours that you're not in the building every day, what do you do? How do you relax?
I was living in Iowa City for a long time. When I moved back from New York, I was here for about 12 years. And then it's probably the longest I've ever lived anywhere was Iowa City. But when I got the position at TCR, I just kind of said, two things. I feel like I should be in the community that I sort of ran away from. Like, I grew up in Cedar Rapids and said, I'll never move back there again. And then I felt like I needed to just be part of the community, and also being able to just go home at night is also nice.
Sure.
So I lived there for a few years, and last year I bought a house, which is a grown-up thing that I never expected to do. And I love just being there, and I have 6 cats inside and 2 outside, and they calm me down, and I know it's weird. I'm total cat lady.
Nope.
We understand.
We get it.
But I love traveling and reading and listening to music, and
Isn't it amazing though that as a theater artist and living in this part of the Midwest, you can afford things like a house, which is something that our I think theater colleagues in other areas are simply not able to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I do see that shift now, particularly post-COVID. And Angie, you and I have talked about this, I think. Just this idea that the New York that people dream about, that young artists dream about, is a New York that maybe doesn't exist anymore, or certainly doesn't exist in that form. And that there's really great theater going on regionally all over the country. Yeah,
absolutely. When I went to New York in the 90s, I instantly fell in love and was madly infatuated for years. And there's just enough to fill one's cup there constantly. To both seeing art and then just other kind of modalities to get into, whether it's classes or kind of self-improvement. I had my whole jazz phase when I worked at Birdland. There's just all these lives. You can live all these different lives there because there's so many different things to do. And I don't know that it's like that. I don't know what it's like there right now. I tend to, after I left, I went back 1 to 2 times a year to just get the theater binge. I know you guys know the theater binge better than anyone in this whole area.
I don't know if that's true.
How to fit in like 7 shows between Thursday and Sunday or whatever. And so that being able to keep in touch with things both on Broadway and off Broadway as well. But then the last few years, this may have been pandemic related, but I kind of stopped doing that and started really investing my time in regional theater and going to the Goodman or Steppenwolf. It's just so easy to go. I mean,
it's a day trip.
Yeah, especially if you go during the week. The Guthrie was just up there last weekend. And then through my other travels, I've seen several shows at Pasadena Playhouse this year, just through like a weird happenstance. So I've seen almost their whole Sondheim season.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I just think regional theater is very exciting right now, and we need to support it for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a little night music. Why this show now?
This one, so we have our main stage musicals in our gorgeous historic theater, and we have a black box space. And the last 3 years, we have been in a partnership with Bruce Moore, which those of you who don't know what that is, it's a historic site in Cedar Rapids. It's gorgeous. It's an incredible just kind of preservation project. And they have performances of all variety there. And we forged a partnership with them starting 3 years ago, where we've done a series in the summer. So we'll do like a children's show, and then a musical that's more for adults. And I've been lucky enough to do the musical each year. It's a size, a capacity. The venue is so unique that it sort of lent itself to properties that just come up because I'm thinking about being in this tree grove and frogs croaking and things. So it came up. It's definitely something I wouldn't be able to program on our main stage. It's a little too niche-y probably, unfortunately, just in terms of appeal in our area. But size, it's the right audience and the right type of audience. And then I just imagined the weekend in the country being out at this actual estate, and I was like, oh God, that has to happen.
Yes.
And that the last 2 years with Bright Star and then once, it was the same thing. It's like, that has to be there. And so there's this list of things that, like Secret Garden, we got to do that there because it lends itself to out of doors. Now, putting Sondheim, especially something that's basically operetta, out of doors, like hugely challenging. Just ask our music director if you ever have her on.
We saw her
as you
Facebook
can
post.
imagine, yeah, she's being eaten by bugs right now. But the whole, since from Jump, and our amazing sound, Darren Ulmer, who does our sound, kind of launched into, okay, how's that going to work sonically out there? And so just have really amazing people to pull it off.
We talked a little bit about Janelle earlier in the podcast about the much like you, the different styles of show that she and you have both been tackling this year, using all different parts of your creative history and acumen, and now coming to this very, in some ways, very formal, very operetta-like piece that is nevertheless full of warmth and heart.
Yeah.
Have you and Janelle ever stopped to total up the shows you've done together?
I should. She's definitely over at TCR. She's got to be like 30 or 40 at this point. I'm going to do that. Now that you mentioned that, yeah. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to tell her that tonight. This is our X number of show.
I would imagine when you reach a certain point that there is not a lot of communication that has to happen because it's kind of already happened over the course of many shows.
Yeah.
Of just how the work's going to get divided and who needs what when. And
yeah. She's just so freaking good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
that magical quality of detail oriented and quick, which doesn't always occur in the same human body.
Yes. Yeah. No. Very, very fortunate that she works with us so much. Yeah.
What to you is the big idea or ideas of the show?
Well, the way I've been envisioning it, and probably doing it outside lens to this, but I kind of look at every show. It's kind of my framework that there is magic, that there's literal, like witchcraft happening in it. There's some kind of magical logic happening. And for this one, it's depending on how you look at it, it's about regret, it's about second chances, whatever. I actually think it's about, or at least the way that we've been thinking about it and putting it on, is that it's about, two people who missed each other for really ego-driven reasons. And then mom, is in sort of a witchy way resets everything, but it's painful, and everyone is affected by this one couple who at one point denied their connection with each other. Everyone else in the show is affected by it. And so when that begins to write itself, or other things, dominoes have to fall in other ways. Everyone's not really living their truth. They're living this idea of, I'm going to be happy by being an actress, and that didn't work out for her. And for Frederick, I don't know how I'm going to be happy, so I'm just going to start over with a completely blank slate with this younger person who's had no experience. So that will work. That's how I'll get love. And none of it works. And so those things begin to topple, and it kind of resolves everything in this magical night. And so, you know, the idea is that they're all that they're all kind of finding their truth and their truest connections with one another. It's just about finding love and being open and receptive to love, and getting that out of the way for everyone involved. And I've thought a lot about Frederica. That's the daughter of Desiree, and I've seen this whole thing as her lesson too, because really the way it's structured is Madame is like giving her a lesson from start to finish. And so structurally you think it's about, you know, Desiree Armfeld, but structurally it's actually about Madame and what she's kind of like, how she's acting upon with her intention upon these people.
And it's almost like a second chance to raise a daughter.
Yeah.
That might get it this time.
Yeah. And she has that incredible liaisons, which our designer asked me like early on, like, what do you think is the song of the show? And I immediately went, well, Send in the Clowns, obviously, is thinking that's the famous song of the show. But it's really, thematically, it's the song Liaisons, where Madame is kind of recounting all of these kind of experiences that she's had in a comical way, but ultimately it leads to, did I make the wrong choices? Did I miss my chance to have something real? And yes, I did. So I don't want my daughter or my granddaughter to wind up kind of in the same place as me.
Like what is the literal cost of the choices you make in life?
Yeah.
Is this what other Sondheim shows have you worked on?
It seems like I've worked on more than this, because when I was in school, it was literally the only thing I brought to my seminars. And my teachers would say, like, you can't bring this because no one can play this in an audition. Like this, you're not going to be able to play this role possibly ever, or at least for like 20. But I was in a production of Assassins when I was in college. I think that's it. So this is I hadn't really thought about it till you asked, but this is my first Sondheim show in this like incarnation of myself. So
Wow.
Yeah. Is it? I hope I'm not forgetting something. Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yay, we get to all be here for
Okay,
it. That's
yay.
wonderful.
That's yes.
Yeah.
And so for our listeners, the show opens in 2 days.
Yep.
So we are right in the thick of last adjustments.
Yeah.
What have you learned from the show or working on the show?
Oh, that's such a good question. Usually I become aware of that much later than right now.
Well, then that may be unfair to ask this week.
It's a pre-mortem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we always, in terms of producing outdoor theater, every year we learn things, and we're doing so much better. But then we keep expanding our vision, so then we kind of push into. I've learned that my team can build a grand piano.
That's amazing.
No. I always learn, whatever the show is, I always learn about the world the universe that we're building, particularly like what comes up in design for costumes and scenery. That I always learn things that I didn't know. And there's new people that I've never worked with. It's really like amazing, legit voices that comprise our quintet. So I don't know. I'll get back to you on that.
No. This may not be the best week for self-reflection, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you do have an amazing. I mean, we looked over your cast list, and it's hard. We our hope with this podcast a little bit is to give people information when they go to the show of where they may have seen some of these actors before. But there's no one in your cast list that people may not have seen before.
Oh,
They're from up and down the corridor, and
A-list,
it's
for
A-list.
Sure.
From the very top to even some of the servants are people who are at the top of their game.
I think this, every show brings out people because a show may have been on, but this brought out people that had just been waiting to do the show or something like it. Yeah. So there's some new people for TCR.
There's nothing else really in musical theater canon like this. Like it occupies a singular spot.
Yeah, it's kind of like an Oscar Wilde play, and it's sort of farce pace and comedy, and then it's also like this legit Sondheim masterpiece. So they have to both come together.
Yeah, it's a little Candide, but it's also little it's a little West Side Story. It's a little
and it's so funny clever until it rips your heart out.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Our Desiree is I was patting myself on the back last night watching her do Set in the Clowns. I was like, yeah, I was right. Yeah.
Yay.
I knew she was gonna. She's just embodying it, and it's funny and touching, and you just love her.
And it's interesting in the musical, she doesn't have. She's not required to do a lot of singing.
Correct. Until
we get to that part in the second
Yeah,
act.
that's the interesting part about it is there's this really tough singing in this show, and then the role was written for Glynis Johns, I think, and barely sung at all. And so I think whoever has the role can kind of approach it. Jordan is an incredible singer. She was one of our leads in Gentleman's Guide. She has that legit voice. And so we've talked about kind of the balance of when is she singing, when is she really full support and open, and then when does she really not need to sing? When is it, especially the hilarious duet "You Must Meet My Wife," where it's just this back and forth, finding the ways to just really make it's a scene. So it's not about singing, but she can sing. And the same holds true for Madame. I think she doesn't necessarily need to be a singer. Elaine Stritch practically spoke the whole thing, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We talked a little bit earlier about the if you look at the Wikipedia article of all the people who have played Madame Armfeld and Desiree Armfeld, it is such a wide range.
Yeah.
So you have people like Juliet Severson and Judi Dench, and then you have Bernadette Peters and Catherine Zeta-Jones and Elizabeth Taylor, and so you're able to bring this wide variety of vocal talent, but what they all share in common is the ability to have impeccable timing and incredible warmth.
Yeah, and to connect with that list you just rattled off there. There's just a range of ages as well.
Right.
Bernadette was in her 60s, and it's not really about that because Jordan's is much younger, but I think we can all connect with kind of regret or big sort of seismic shifts in our lives and taking stock and all of that. So I think Catherine Zeta-Jones was not even 40 playing it. It's not really. It's just this role that when it's time to play it, it's time for a woman to play it. So yeah.
Old enough to have missed something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Well, we are very excited to see it.
Yes.
I'm excited for you to see it.
Can you? We did this in the beginning of the show, but could you tell our listeners again how to get tickets?
Yeah, go to Theater CR, and it's theater with the RE, CR as in cat and red, CR.org, and it'll be right there. You'll see the cast right on the page. Click through. Bruce Moore is. It's a lovely experience. You show up and you can picnic. There are people that get there, and this is a long tradition, even before we started our partnership with Bruce Moore. There were the classics at Bruce Moore for something like 25 years, and people show up and they picnic for an hour, and sometimes it's just crazy, like candelabras and torches and creme brulee
and multiple levels.
Yeah, but you can also just have a bag of Doritos and then a bottle of wine, cheap wine, or show up with nothing, because we'll have some light concessions as well. But it's just a lovely evening. I think people just love to come.
One thing I did want to point out that different theaters start at different times, and this particular show starts at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I know people are going to not know this because 7 p.m. And it's just to help us kind of get through. We like to get through things before 10 out there, so it helps us get the show and everything sent home and everything packed up. So
well, it is in a residential neighborhood around the area.
Yeah.
So it's a lot like there's some other places nationally that do the same sort of thing.
Start a little earlier.
If you go to Ravinia in Chicago, the concert must end at 10 because there's a noise ordinance. Mm-hmm. So it ends. But so I saw that and I thought, oh gosh, we may want to draw people's attention, because we were so used to a 7:30 or 8 o'clock start time. And
thank you for that reminder. I'll just probably text our team and say just extra reminder, 7 p.m.
And I think the doors open at 5:15, so you can come and luxuriate ahead of time. So,
yeah.
Well, break a leg and happy opening. We're going to see it on Sunday. We're very excited.
I'll be over and I'll say hello and sit on your blanket or whatever.
Please do.
We may be bringing these exact chairs.
Yes,
fun.
They're very portable.
I love that.
Yes, a Barbie chair will travel.
So again, thank you, Angie Toomsen, for joining us.
I'm so glad that you've started this. No two better people to have a theater podcast, or whatever your podcast is going to be. It may not just be theater.
Well, for this first year, we are looking forward to talking to people such as yourself that are creating interesting things in the quarter, and then also talking a little bit about how things. What happened to the shows before they arrived here. And it's interesting that Little Night Music has only ever been done in community theater, as near as we can tell, 2 other times, once in 1978 and once in 2011. So
Which
it is time.
Patrick directed.
I did, yeah. It was high time. It was time to come back.
I saw that production.
Oh, all right.
Wow.
I did. Yeah. That was the first production of Night Music, besides the, Broadway bootlegs and.
Well, you weren't alive in 1978, so you could not possibly have seen it.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't alive.
Yeah,
we'll just say that. Okay.
Well, thank you again, Angie, and we're so glad that you could join us.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for listening to our maiden voyage, our very first recording, our first podcast ever.
Yes.
We're very excited. We hope you had a good time. We hope you learned something and are excited to hear more. If you want to get in touch with us, please reach out. We have a website, crookedpaththeater.com. That's theater R-E, not E-R. Please leave your comments if you want to hear, if you have a specific thing you'd like to hear about. Especially something coming up in this next theater season, or someone you'd like to hear interviewed, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Or if you just want to say, hey, be better, we'd love to hear about that too.
And if you have corrections, please feel free to send them.
Yes, we would love to hear that. We will be back in a few weeks when we are going to be talking about 3.5 Macbeths. There are no fewer than 3 full productions of Macbeth coming up in across the Eastern Corridor in the next few months, and a couple of smaller Macbeth type projects to talk about as well. So we're going to get into it and give you sort of a slight Shakespeare primer on the Scottish King.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you very much. In the meantime, I'm Patrick Delaney.
And I'm Chris Okishi, and we have a special way of signing off.
Oh, yes, I've forgotten. This is actually in honor of my niece, Penny.
Hi, Penny.
Who goes to Horace Mann Elementary. Her teacher taught...
And studies at the Nolte Academy. Sorry, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Her teacher this year, her 4th grade teacher, taught her a way to start the day, which is Rosebud Thorn. And what this is, and you may, it's possible that every parent listening knows exactly what this is, mm-hmm. And we're new to the game. But rose is your rose is something you're excited about happening right now. Your bud is something that's coming up that you're excited about, and your thorn is something that's sort of sticking in your craw locally, theatrically. So we thought we'd take this idea and apply it to theater. So Chris, what's your rosebud thorn? So my rose right now is kind of is tremendously exciting. So we've long maintained that the people from the corridor go far in whatever endeavors they take on in the world, and that includes the area of the arts. And we have artists that have gone on from here to in the heights of visual arts, of recording, and also in the theater. And right now, several people's theater dreams are coming true. So there's a production in New York that is actually produced by Emily Duncan, who's a local music legend. Actually, she's a world-class flautist, but has found her way to producing theater. And it is also starring not one, but 2 people from Eastern Iowa, but one is especially near and dear to us, and that's Elijah Jones.
Yay, Elijah.
Elijah, who is making his off-Broadway debut in the musical Scouts.
It's a new musical.
And a brand new musical. And our dear friend Genevieve Wisdom just got a chance to see it and is giving excellent advance word. But that is happening as we speak. If you happen to be in the New York area, the musical Scouts is definitely worth your time, and you get a chance to see some people who grew up and are spreading their wings.
It plays to the end of August.
Absolutely.
What's your bud?
So my bud is this time of year. We just had a nice rainstorm today, and afterwards I just felt that the beginning of the feeling of fall in the air, which for me doesn't always mean football. I know that means that for a lot of people, but for me means...
I've heard of that.
Yes, yeah. We've heard of football. And we certainly we are whatever you want to do to support our community, please go ahead and do so. We know that the sports does a lot for our community, but we also think the arts do a lot for the community too. And it's the start of the new theater season, and it's so exciting to watch all of the theaters put their plans into place and into production. And talking about Stephen Sondheim today got me excited to work on and begin thinking about Sondheim on Sondheim, a show I'll be doing with City Circle Theater Company at the Corville Center for the Performing Arts. That'll be going up at the beginning of February, but we'll have auditions the second week of November. So please take a look at the website for the Corville Center for the Performing Arts to learn more about that. But really, my butt at this point is everything that is coming into bloom in the theater world in our area.
Ew.
I know. I went on and on.
And what's your thorn?
So I think, one of the sad realities of life is the longer you live, the more people you end up experiencing their passing. And we've had a number of people who have meant a lot to us artistically pass away this summer. And just today, Robbie Robertson passed away. And Robbie Robertson, for those of you that don't know, was a seminal musician and singer and songwriter, most affiliated with Bob Dylan, and then the band, which was referred to as the Band. And he also had a career scoring movies and had several albums of his own. And on his very first solo album had a song called Broken Arrow that was among my favorite. He also wrote the song The Wait, which has a tremendous version in the movie The Last Waltz by Martin Scorsese with the Staple Singers and Mavis Staples, and which is one of my favorite versions. I also really love the version by Sherry Ray Scott from her Broadway show Everyday Rapture, with Lindsay Mendez and Betsy Wolfe singing in backup. A tremendous version, which creative Googling you can find. But good rest to you, Robert Robinson. Thank you for filling our world with beautiful, beautiful music.
All right. My rose is that ICCT has found a home.
Yay!
After an uncertain year, it seems they have found a forever home. And we're very excited about that. ICCT is the OG theater that sort of, it's in a way that we're all here because of ICCT, and we owe them a tremendous debt, and they keep doing it, and we're very lucky that we have a true community theater like ICCT, and they're gonna, after a strange year, they're back, and we're very excited about that. Full disclosure, Chris Okishi stole my bud. I was going to talk about Elijah's show.
I'm so sorry.
We do not. We're trying not to reveal our rosebud thorns to each other. So I was blindsided. Listeners, I want you to know that. And
this
there
is
will
just
be,
like when we go out to eat.
There will be a
and I ordered the thing that you're going to want to order.
Well, that's correct, and there are rules, and you're breaking them. So I'm just going to vamp and say my bud is simply that I'm glad we're doing this. We've been talking about doing this for a long, long time.
That's true.
And so my bud is that we do get to do more of these, and that you find them interesting. And my thorn is we are very sad about the Revival Theater's cancellation of Sunset Boulevard in September. We were very much looking forward to that production. We really like what Revival is doing for our area. We think Brian Glick is a wonderful artist, and we really hope that it is a postponement and not a cancellation. Because what a treat to be able to see a show like Sunset Boulevard in this area. That's a get. That's remarkable. So yeah, those are my rosebud thorns.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very much. As I said, we'll be back in a few weeks to talk about Mackers. In the meantime, I'm Patrick Delaney.
And I'm Chris Okishi.
And this is Until We Change It. Let's see if I can get this right. Voices from the Crowd, a crooked path. Help me.
Guide
to theater in the Eastern Corridor. Yeah, Eastern Iowa. We got to fix that. Please help us. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.